Thank you, everybody, for joining today's webinar on the Dunning module. Before we get started, I'd like to share our safe harbor statement. This means that what we're showing you today is subject to change in the future with new releases. It's important that you make your buying decisions based on the product as it currently exists. Here's the agenda for today. I'll quickly introduce myself. We'll talk about a product overview. I'll go over what we're actually covering in the demonstration today. We'll jump into the live demonstration so I can show you the product. And at the end, we will have some time for questions and answers. Just as an introduction, my name is Samantha Kalasian, and I'm a solution consultant here at NetSuite. And I'm based out of our Chicago, Illinois office. I've been at NetSuite since 2015, and my role is to work with our current customer base and understand challenges they may be having, as well as develop a solution for them. I've worked with the Dunning module since I've been here at NetSuite, and I'm excited to show you the functionality that it brings. So what we hear from customers that are a good fit for the Dunning module is that they have an increased accounts receivable load. Their days sales outstanding is extremely high, and when contacting their customers, there may be some inconsistent messaging, as well as the entire process just takes too long and it's very, very manual. So the Dunning module helps to eliminate those pains. You can create customer-specific Dunning processes. You're in control of the verbiage that you're sending out. And again, automation comes into play as well, so those manual processes will subside. Here's our demonstration flow for the demonstration today. I'll talk a little bit about the setup and go through the Dunning procedures as well as the Dunning rules and the actual template that you would be sending out to customers. I'll go in and send out a Dunning email, and then we'll look back into the customer record to see where that information has been developed and stored. So we will go ahead and jump into the demonstration. All right, so as I make my way over to the NetSuite application, I'm currently logged in as Larry Nelson, who is our Dunning Director. And because NetSuite is a role-based system, we're always going to have that separation of duties. So your users will only see the information that's most important to their role. Now, from a Dunning perspective, we'll see information around AR that's overdue, customers that you're working with, customers that may be currently involved in the Dunning process, letters that have recently been sent out. The idea here is that visibility that you have within NetSuite also extends out through the Dunning functionality as well. Now, there's a lot that's driving a lot of all of this data as far as how we figure out which customers get the letters sent to them, at what time, how often, as well as the verbiage that's sent. And the way that we define those characteristics are through our Dunning procedures. Now, our Dunning procedures is essentially the setup that you do once. Or you can come back in here and change things. You can add a new Dunning procedure. As your business evolves, obviously you're going to have the flexibility to make sure that the Dunning procedures fit your organization. Now, these Dunning procedures can be applied to a customer or an invoice. This one is applied to a customer, and that means that multiple invoices for one customer can be sent at once. So that's going to be in more of a consolidated basis. If the procedure applies to an invoice, that allows you to send letters out on an individual invoice basis. Let's open up our procedure and take a deeper look at the characteristics that define the procedure. Now again, this procedure helps us to define which customers we're targeting, which invoices we're looking at, how often we're sending these letters out, and then what's the actual criteria that we want to have in place. So first, you would obviously give your procedure a name. You can obviously identify it. We are going to determine whether or not this applies to a customer or an invoice. Like I mentioned, this standard dunning procedure applies to a customer. We can choose to send these letters out manually or automatically using our sending schedule. For demo purposes today, I will demonstrate how we can manually send these letters out, but keep in mind that this can be a fully automated process, and I'll talk about how that can be a little bit later in the demonstration. We want to define a minimum dunning interval, and this is controlling the time period in which you can send out a second letter to a customer. So this is set to 30, which means that if a customer has received a letter in the last 30 days, they cannot receive another one until that time period has been expired. So that's basically the setup and who it's going to be applied to. Now, in terms of the target group that we want to send these letters to, we can get pretty granular. So first off, we can define and apply this to the native NetSuite segments, so subsidiary, department, location, class. But you can also look at it from a dynamic standpoint and incorporate a saved search, for example. So let's say you have a saved search, customers in California, and that is targeting every single customer who has an address or a zip code within the state of California. So the system looks at that geography of the customer, and you can apply that specific saved search to this dunning procedure, so only customers in California will receive this type of dunning procedure. I've got the assign automatically to new records checked, and this allows the procedure to automatically be assigned to new customers or invoices that fall within the criteria upon their creation inside of the system. So that means you won't have to come in each time a customer is created or an invoice is generated and add them to the dunning procedure. That step is taken care of you here. So when a new customer is created, for example, and let's just go back to the saved search example, they have an address that's within California, they would automatically be assigned this dunning procedure and start to receive letters based upon their delinquency. Now, if I direct your attention to the bottom of the page, we've defined 3 different levels, and the levels determine what the threshold is, and it also determines what the actual letters are that are being sent out. So as you can see, we have 3 different rules set up, and this is telling the system that when we have a customer that is 30, 60, or 90 days overdue with a balance greater than a certain dollar amount, a letter will be sent out to them automatically. You'll notice that we can leverage the multi-currency and multi-language functionality that is inherent within NetSuite. So the conversion rates are automatically brought in. If we were doing business in different locales, the amount would convert to the correct currency as needed. Now, if I throw the dunning procedure into edit mode, we can take a look at the template a little bit further. And the template is what is going to be sent out to your customers. And the verbiage of the template is going to be defined by you. So you notice I had 3 different levels. Level 1, maybe the messaging is a little bit nicer. But level 3, they're 90 days overdue. Maybe the messaging there is a little bit sterner. But I've opened up our dunning template for level 2. And here you have the flexibility to define it and configure it to your organization. So you can choose to include certain documentation. You can attach statements, attach open transactions, attach copies of your invoices. If you have a customer that's questioning you for some reason, why they're receiving this dunning letter, they're confused, they don't understand, being able to attach these statements kind of gives everybody a common set of information to reference and to work off of. Now, within your templates, you do have the flexibility to either create a template in a PDF format or in an XML format. This one, for this example, we do have an XML template. And if I click on the template, we can see some of the verbiage that we have for the level 2 dunning procedure. So I can direct your attention down here. It says your account with us is past due. Our records indicate that you have a total outstanding of blank, and that will pull in from the invoices automatically. And that would be the verbiage that's sent to you. Again, this is completely configurable to your organization. So again, you're going to have the flexibility to define the template, make sure it fits and aligns with your organization. You set up the dunning procedure. Again, it's a one-time setup. You set it and forget it, and the process can begin. So just to recap, in order to start the dunning process inside of NetSuite, you just create your dunning procedure here. You define who should be a part of the group, what kind of letters they're receiving, how often they're receiving them, and the process can just automatically start. Now, how do we assign customers to these procedures and to these rules? So we can assign procedures to customers in a bulk way, and we can use that, we can do that using our Dunning bulk assignment screen. So this is essentially performing a mass update that defines what procedure you want assigned to which customer. Again, this is more of a way to do it when you have current customers in your system. But again, if you remember on that Dunning procedure, when new customers are created, they would automatically be associated to the standard Dunning procedure upon their creation. So here we want to define our Dunning procedure criteria. So we want to be sure that we're going to apply this to a customer, and we can choose our Dunning procedure, which is our standard Dunning. Again, if you had more than one Dunning procedure here, you can go ahead and choose the specific Dunning procedure you want assigned to your customers. And then a list of your customers will be here, and you can go ahead and start to assign that Dunning procedure to the customer. Now, Atlas Communication is who I'm going to assign to. I'm going to global search Atlas Communication and open up their client record. And show you that on the client or the customer record, a new Dunning subtab will be applied to the record itself that you can see right here. And under the Dunning procedure record, the Dunning subtab, we have a way of defining the recipient of who should be receiving the Dunning letters, as well as setup. So here we can see information like which procedure they're assigned to, their preference, whether they want their letters to be sent by email or to be printed. We can see the Dunning level, and we can even see if the Dunning process has been paused, which I'll go over. But if I head back to the bulk assignment and click on my Atlas Communications customer and click on Assign to Customers, the system will automatically assign that Dunning procedure to Atlas Communication. Let me refresh the client record and show you that within the Dunning tab and within the setup, the Dunning procedure should now be assigned to this customer, which means, once they have an overdue invoice that meets a certain criteria, they would start to receive the standard Dunning procedure automatically. Now, to show you how these letters would be sent out, we can utilize our Dunning email sending queue. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to perform this process manually, but it can be automated, like I've mentioned before. So what happens here is that the system goes out and flags customers that have an overdue invoice based on the specific criteria that we have defined in the filters here. Once you've defined your filters, it will return a list of customers who need to be sent a letter. Now you can see we've got 4 different customers here, and we've got our recipients, and we can also see what Dunning level that they are at currently. So a few of them are at level 2, and one of them is at level 3. So what we're going to do is choose our customer and click on Send. An Ultimate Consulting Group will then receive a Dunning letter with the level 2 verbiage based on their overdue invoices. Now, I know I'm showing you this in a manual setting right now, but again, this process can be automated. And with the Dunning module, you're going to receive a workflow that manages the automatic sending of Dunning letters. Now, during the automated Dunning process, the system essentially searches for customers and invoices with the overdue amounts, so what you essentially define in those Dunning procedures. And then dependent upon those dunning procedures and levels that you have set up, the system will determine which customers and which invoices should be done, and then it automatically sends them a letter by email. Again, you can choose to use this dunning email sending queue if you'd like to send them out manually. And we also have a dunning PDF printing queue, which essentially is the exact same thing as you see here, but instead of emailing them, they would be printed. So you'll notice that our Ultimate Consulting Group has been removed from our customer. And if I go to their client record, consulting. All right, so let's search for our Ultimate Consulting Group. Let's go to the client list and search for Ultimate. All right. Ultimate. And I'm not seeing it here. Well, let me search a different client that recently had the dunning procedure set up for them. So when I was in that email dunning sending queue, I sent that email to the client, and it should have gone to the Ultimate Consulting Group. But what happens is that if I go to a client who has an email sent out and go to the Dunning tab, we can see detailed information, like again, Dunning procedure. We can see the preference on whether they want the emails to be printed or to be emailed out. We can see what Dunning level they are currently at, as well as when the last email was sent. We can also see whether or not the customer has their Dunning paused. Now, we do give you the option to individually pause dunning for specific clients. So let's say they've been really compliant and they've been in communication with you, and you don't want to bog them down with more and more dunning letters. You can come into their client record and actually pause them until some invoices and things are settled. So we do give you the option to pause that dunning procedure. And messages and emails are also sent out through NetSuite. So through the messaging subtab, we will see the actual letter that is being sent out. And if we view it, we can see that verbiage that we saw in the template for level 2. And that is saying your account with us is overdue. Our records indicate that you have an outstanding balance of $10,000 with the following invoices overdue. And we'll see the invoices listed out. If there was more than one, you will see this chart get a little bit bigger and list out all of the invoices. And I mentioned that we do give you the capability to attach other invoices as well, and the attachments would live within the email message. So as you start to have conversations with your customer about overdue invoices, instead of it being a very manual and labor-intensive process, it can be done automatically in more of a consistent manner with the NetSuite Dunning module. Again, that's going to alleviate your increased AR. It reduces your days sales outstanding. And then again, all of that communication is logged in one place, maintaining that central source of truth and visibility throughout your. All right, so thank you everybody for joining today's Dunning presentation. At this time, we will be going through questions and answers. The first one, what does Dunning cost? Is there a cost associated with it? There is, and the best way to find out that answer is to contact your account manager. They would have the cost breakdown for you. Another question we have is, can you send a certain template to a group of customers? And yes, you can. You can set up different dunning procedures like you saw in the beginning of the demonstration and associate certain templates to that dunning procedure and then use a saved search in order to pull in the customers that you want to associate with. The third one is, can you mix invoice and customer level dunning procedures? So when you create a dunning procedure, you choose either a customer or an invoice that it applies to, but there is an allow override button on the dunning procedure that allows you to override a customer procedure with an invoice. So in that case, it would be essentially a mixed invoice and customer process. Can you change the email address on the dunning record so future dunning emails for a specific invoice are sent to a different person? And yes, you would be able to define that in the customer record under the dunning tab. There is a setup tab as well as a recipients tab, and you would define who you want the dunning letters to go to in the recipients tab. Is there a way to see what dunning letters are scheduled to send in the next day or week so we can review ahead of time and choose to pause the dunning process if needed? And absolutely, you can utilize the email sending dunning queue that I showed in the demonstration as well as the printing dunning queue, and that shows you customers that will be receiving dunning letters but have not yet. And so that would be the opportunity for you to pause the individual customer dunning. And then last question that we have is, will the presentation or slides be provided to us after the webinar? And yes, they will be. So thank you everybody again for joining. There were some questions we weren't able to answer, but feel free to follow up with your NetSuite account manager and we'll be sure to follow up with you and get you the correct answer that you need. Thank you again and have a great day.